So there is a trend which is emerging within West Africa and the Sahel region in particular, which is anti-France. They don't want to cooperate with France militarily.
Welcome to The Gist on Strat News Global. I'm Ramananda Sengupta. Our very, very special guest today is Ruchita Beri, a leading scholar and commentator on African studies. She's currently a senior fellow at the Vivekananda International Foundation. In a career spanning over 3 decades, she has coordinated the Africa Center at the MP-IDSA and served as the president of African Studies Association of India. She's also a member of CII's Africa Committee and the editor of Africa Trends, a biannual magazine on Africa. Thank you so much for joining us, ma'am. I appreciate your taking time out. The main reason why I sort of wanted to talk to you particularly is that, as perhaps not just the, Indian side, as almost a global expert on Africa, you must have sensed the thing that's been going on in the Sahel vis-a-vis the French. What exactly is going on there? I mean, what is the problem? Why are the French being kicked out so unceremoniously?
Thank you so much for inviting me for your show. I'm really glad to be here. Unfortunately, we are discussing a pushback on France and its activities and its presence in Sahel region of Africa and West Africa in particular. So this whole, the current episode began sometime late November with the Chadian foreign minister saying that, we don't want to continue the defense cooperation with France. Mm-hmm. And immediately, I would say within hours of that, Senegal president also said that we don't want any French troops in our country. And subsequently, on the New Year's Eve, the Ivorian president announced that they are terminating their defense cooperation agreement with France. Mm-hmm. So there is a trend which is emerging within West Africa and the Sahel region in particular, which is anti-France. They don't want to cooperate with France militarily, and it is not only these 3 countries that we are talking of. This whole thing began 2 years back with the coup in Mali and the coup in the other 2 countries like Niger and Burkina Faso, and the military juntas in these 3 countries also, once they came to power, said that we don't want anything to do with the French. In Mali, where France had been present for a decade, they came in Mali in 2013 mm-hmm. At the behest of the Malian government, basically to control the rise of terrorism in the country. They were there to they were supposed to rout out terrorism from the country, because the terror groups had covered, half of the country, and there were attempts of secession and things like this happening. So they came in to stabilize the country and also the neighboring countries. They set up a group called the G5 group, which overseed the regional military cooperation backed by the French. The mm-hmm. other countries which were involved were Burkina Faso, apart from Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, and Niger, and Mauritania. So these are the 5 countries that we are talking of.
Okay.
And from them, most of these countries now, the French troops are not there. French troops were asked to leave from Mali, they were asked to leave from Niger, and they were asked to leave from Burkina Faso, and now they've gone from Chad, and they're going to leave from Ivory Coast soon too, right. and Senegal. Mm-hmm. So why is this happening? Why has this trend France facing such a tumultuous time in West Africa, and why is their influence shifting in Africa? I think there are three main reasons for this, which I can gather. The first is that, as I mentioned, they were there on a mission to stabilize the region,
right,
security-wise, but they haven't, delivered. There are no successful outcomes. Terrorism continues in that part of the world, in that part of Africa. Secondly, the economy is in a bad shape. Most of these countries' economy is in a bad shape. Poverty still continues. Ethnic conflict still happening. Corruption is still happening. So they didn't do anything to develop the country. So the population within these countries are really dissatisfied, and they don't want the French troops. They didn't want the French troops or the French to have anything to do with them, because they feel that they have not delivered in terms of their promise of stabilizing the economic situation of these countries. So they haven't really helped the people as such. They haven't been pro-people in their relationship in these countries. So that's the third thing. And the other thing is that ever since these in all these countries, ever since the French troops left or are leaving, in at least in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, you found that immediately after that there was an entrance of Russia,
right,
and the Wagner Corporation. So there's a geopolitical shift happening with the exit of France. Countries like Russia are moving in a big way. These countries are inviting Russia to be their partner in the security issues. And
if I could just interrupt you for a second. We spoke about terrorism.
Yeah.
There is a school of thought which says that the whole terrorism thing started with the fall of Libya, with Gaddafi's ouster. How valid is that claim?
That's quite true. See, the Libyan state collapsed in 2011.
Right.
And that's the time when most of the arms which were sent, which were floating in that country, they moved to the Sahelian region, not along with the mercenaries, the warriors, the so-called rebel groups. They all congregated in West Africa, particularly in the Sahelian region. And in Mali in particular, they led to a rise of the rebellion of the Tuareg group, which wanted to secede from Mali. They wanted to divide the country into two and take the northern half of Mali and secede from the country. So that's the link up with Libya, because there was a surplus of arms, there was a surplus of rebels, of mercenaries which were floating in the region, which all then moved into the Sahel region, and that created a vacuum in this part of the world, and that led to the rise of terror groups like the Islamic State of Western Sahara, the various other groups, terror groups within the region, which have really created a lot of problems for these countries, security-wise.
Boko Haram was not so active in
Boko Haram is in Nigeria, and you can say that there's no direct link between Boko Haram and these countries, and Boko Haram and some of these groups, but there is definitely a link up with the ISIS. So this whole region of West Africa has been involved in a lot of instability. It has witnessed a lot of instability in the last decade, and the leaders in these countries are now blaming the French for the problems that they are facing, and they are saying that the French have not delivered in terms of making the countries more stable.
Would it then also be right to say that the rise of sort of military rule in most of these countries is also due to that?
to some extent, I think it's not just that. It's not just the French. There's also the internal problems that I mentioned. That there was corruption, there was poverty, there was misappropriation of funds by the democratic leaders or whatever. So that led to a change in a change in the government with the military taking over. They felt that the democratic regimes have not delivered and that they may be able to do things better. And also there's also this issue of extending this sovereignty. They say that it's a question of sovereignty. They don't want the French there because they want to maintain their sovereignty in their countries. They want to deal with their own issues themselves.
Okay.
That is the other reason why this is happening. And the third important reason is that they are looking at alternate partners. They are sick and tired of the French rule, and France has been in the continent despite the independence of these countries. It has maintained political and economic links with these countries, military ties with these countries, despite the independence of these countries. In the 60s, it has maintained a relationship which is within the framework of Francophone, which basically made these countries more dependent on France economically and militarily. And France also exploited these countries' natural resources, whether it is uranium in Niger or gold in Chad and other countries. So they are these countries are looking for alternatives, looking for a partner which would help them in getting out of the misery that they are facing in terms of economically, and also stabilize their country's security situation. But that's not it's not really clear right now whether this will happen, because in the last 1 year since the exit of the French troops from Mali, violence has still continued. Despite the presence of Wagner Group in Mali, the violence levels have, the extremist attacks, the terror attacks have not gone down. So it is a tough, there are tough times ahead for these countries.
You mentioned Russia. What about China?
Yeah, China is also very much there. China is there. So these countries are looking at what they're saying. They don't want to partner with the global north. They want to partner with the global south now. And the global south includes not just China, but also countries like Turkey, India, UAE. UAE is an important partner for Chad, And similarly, countries are economically, they are very well connected with China. China is there in each of these countries in a big way economically. And similarly, India is also a country which some of these countries are looking at, if not in the Sahel, but largely, if you look at the larger African scene, there is an emergence of the global south,
right,
with the countries that I mentioned, China, Turkey, Malaysia, Japan, India.
So right now, if you were to sort of look at the situation there, and you're saying that it's getting, from what I understand, you're saying that it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Is there a role that India can play, not just economically, but perhaps also militarily?
See, economic engagement has been going on for a very long time. That's there with Africa as a whole. India's economic ties or India's trade ties with Africa go back centuries. So from the you could say from first century AD onwards, there's been trade across the Indian Ocean region, So that's one. And in post-independence period, India has developed close economic ties. And currently, India's trade with the African countries is close to almost $100 billion. So
100 billion across total
across entire African region.
Who would be the biggest player there?
Till a few years back, it was Nigeria, but now our oil imports from Nigeria have gone down. So South Africa it was the second largest, and now it's the foremost trading partner of India in Africa.
What other role do you see for India there? I mean, is there something
we are building military ties also with the African countries, but as you know that India's military cooperation has been largely in terms of human resource development, training, and capacity building. Maritime cooperation has emerged as a big area of cooperation, at least on the Indian Ocean region. Basically, India has been involved in either supporting these countries whenever they faced a natural disaster. So Indian Navy has been there to support them, support these countries, or in terms of surveillance and other issues, because most of these countries do not have the capacities. Their navies are not very strong. Some of them do not have navies, they just have coast guards, or they're developing coast guards. So capacity building could be a way out, because as you are aware, there were several threats, maritime threats, which were there in the region, especially in the Indian Ocean region. From 2008 onwards, Indian Navy has been present in Gulf of Aden, trying to push back pirates from the region and giving support to the African countries in terms of in diminishing their maritime insecurity. But India is not alone. There were several other partners which were involved in that. And this threat was diminishing, but from last year onwards, you've seen that the situation has changed. First, the Houthis attacks in the Red Sea, and also the reemergence of piracy. There have been more than 100 pirate attacks in the region in the last 1 year. So that alone showcases the fact that and for India, this insecurity is a problem, because our trade, 90% of our trade is through the maritime route and Suez Canal. Red Sea and beyond that, Suez Canal was the way our trade was happening with Europe or Americas. But now that route is blocked, so that impacts countries like India and others in Asia, China and others, So therefore, there is a big interest in India in enhancing maritime cooperation. And India's relationship with Africa is demand-based. The African countries themselves have expressed interest in building partnership with India in maritime sphere. Kenyan president was here in 2023, and he developed a vision of maritime vision of cooperation with India. Similarly, the Tanzanian president was here in 2023, and she also enhanced, the talks between Prime Minister Modi and her also led to a firmer defense cooperation between the two countries. So there is an interest expressed by the African countries themselves to enhance security ties with India.
I know that this is a subject that we can talk on for a lot of time, but I know you're in a hurry, and I know we'll be running out of time. So let me close with the last question. That, we were talking about security tie-ups. There is a school of thought which says that whenever you have these military interventions, they're not really a local military thing. It's more to do with somebody in the West sort of, dictating that, this is what you should be doing. Maybe somebody in New York or somebody in Paris or wherever it is. And it's not the local understandings that have been taken into place. It's more to do with somebody else's. How valid is that argument?
Well, I think it's a mix of these things in case of Africa, and we were discussing West Africa at the moment. So there are problems which are germane, which are local. There was local discontent. If you say talk of Nigeria, there were problems in the development pattern in the country, which led to the rise of a group like Boko Haram, which has and say no to Western education. You know, that was the logo on which, say, Boko Haram emerged. You know, so there was that, but it was infiltrated by jihadists. You know, so they then developed. They became a proper terror group, and obviously, when you have a terror group, and we've seen this since the rise of Al Qaeda, that there are networks which tie these groups, and so is the case with the African terror groups also. So there is a linkage with the greater jihad, you may say, and in some cases, in past you could have said that in say in the francophone countries also, that France may have been responsible for change of governments which were not in sync with the French government, but I'm not really sure whether that continues to exist. But that's the new colonial style of functioning, and that is what these countries in Africa do not want. They do not want a neo-colonial partner.
Right.
They want a partner which supports their development priorities, a partner which supports and understands their security limitations and helps them in dealing with them. And India has offered itself as the partner to most of the African countries.
And I think hopefully we will be able to get more influence there sometime soon.
That is something which we have to wait and watch.
Well, I think the whole world is waiting and watching for a lot of things. On that note, we'll have to close, unfortunately, this particular discussion. Thank you so very much for taking time out to talk to us.
Thank you so much
I'm sure
for inviting me.
Like me, a lot of other people who wanted to know what was going on there, and I look forward to having you with us again.
Thank you.
That was Ruchita Beri, one of the world's foremost scholars and commentator on African studies, talking to us about the recent developments there vis-a-vis the pushback against the French. I do hope you enjoyed this particular edition of The Gist, and I look forward to having you with us again. Till then, this is Ramananda Sengupta signing out.